Welcome back to the Devy Hour. It is Thursday night. We're not talking Devy still, but that's okay because it's draft season. You know you love it. Everybody's talking about it. We've got lots to cover tonight. We are going to be hitting the tight end class. We're going to talk about the hot, sexy names. We're also going to talk about some guys that are rising up for some apparent reason, and we're going to have a little fun with it. So we're gonna chat all things tight end. First and foremost, as always, the man, the myth, the Velboom's next to me. How are you, Paul?
I'm excited that it's basically Friday, long week of work. Excited to get this over with. Excited to hang out with some friends this weekend and do some actual stuff. How about you?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a long season that we're in, but I feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel. We're a month away from the draft, so I feel like some of the stuff I've been grinding on and trying to get ready for the draft is just about done. So I can turn my attention to enjoying the draft and not preparing for it. So that's exciting. And I'm ready for the weekend. I'm a week away from vacation. I haven't quite checked out yet, but I'm getting dangerously close to checking out. So I'm trying to hold it together and just get through because we got three more live streams before I go on vacation. So I'm gonna make the most of them. We've got some news and notes tonight, though. So it's been a wild pro day season that we're in, and this week has been no different. So we've heard if you listen to anything, you've heard about the Penn State Pro Day that happened and the freakishness of Jason Oway and Micah Parsons, two defenders that are slated to be potential first round picks. One is definitely a first rounder. One is getting hyped up. They both ran sub 4.4 at their pro day. That is insane. Parsons is 6'3", almost 250. Oway's 6'5", over 250. They're just massive, freakish athletes. Um, but the thing I think I want to pump the brakes on a little bit is pro days. So everybody loved the combine. Combine season didn't happen. It isn't here. So now pro days have been getting inflated. So these numbers come out and people get all hot and bothered because they see these things. But last I checked, pro days are meant to be scripted to make these players look perfect. What do you make of these numbers? What do you make of pro days in general? What value do you place on them, Paul?
Um, it's almost a is this a confirmation on what I saw on film? Everyone was 12 months ago. I was not the biggest Claypool fan. I still aren't. Um, I thought he was going to run like a 4.7, and then he ran a 4.38, and then everyone went, okay, well, even if you don't hate him like I do, you had him at a 4.5 5, and maybe he goes and plays tight end like Albert O, and is that position. All right, is this a confirmation or is it something just out of left field? Um, I look at some of these and say, okay, they are scripted, but that's not going to make you run faster, jump higher, whatever it is, and be more explosive. I know this is the Thursday show, not the Monday show, but Oway, he's a nice athlete, but he's got hand issues. Um, he's not the most savvy technical wise, but someone's gonna look at him and go, all right, we're selecting you in the late first to mid second, just off the upside. He kind of reminds me of Chason from last year, where you can see the physical floor, but you're just not sure what's behind it. Um, if he works out, excellent. If and the more I think about it, the more I get why franchises take shots like this and just hope, because if they just keep parring every hole for a golf analogy, they're going to fall behind. So you might as well take some shots here and there. Uh, Parsons on the other side of that, I think he confirms what we know, that he's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, and
So
Oway, I mean, so for teams that are looking for that edge guy that he could stand up and be an off-ball type guy, like a 3-4 outside linebacker, I think a team would be smart to take a shot on him. So think about what's at the end of the first round. Teams like Pittsburgh that lost Bud Dupree or something like that. I mean, you could take a shot on him, and I wouldn't feel bad about him as a late first rounder. He's going to be a developmental guy. Like, I don't see him as somebody that you could put him out on the field game one and he would be successful. He's going to take his lumps because he has to develop in some of those areas. But, I mean, when I see things like this, and Parsons, personally speaking, I was excited because Parsons mentioned that the Lions have talked to him numerous times. So I would love to see him at 7 instead of, a guy we're going to talk about here shortly, like a Pitts or something. I've heard a few Detroit reporters talk about they're hearing rumblings that Pitts could be the guy. I don't need a third tight end in 7 years go in the top 10 to Detroit. That would drive me absolutely bonkers. I know he's a weapon. He could play outside, but I don't want it. But
who's the other one? Pettigrew?
Ebron, because he went at 10 on the dot, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
So needless to say, these two pro days made me go, okay, these guys really did solidify. They're probably going to be first rounders. Oway could slip a little bit, but with what this class looks like and because the need is big for getting after the quarterback, I think Oway made himself some money this week.
Yeah, it's almost a top about 7. Then you have a next about 10, and then after that, it's a free for all for about the next I don't know 30
Yeah.
picks.
On the
And there are certain franchises that are going to sit there and go, all right, we make the playoffs every single year. We need corner, defensive end help, or offensive line
Yeah.
help. And is this guy within the top 20 available players? Yes. Okay, he's the pick. Is he the best actual player? No. But we make the playoffs every year, so he's our
Right.
pick.
Well, and
And I can see Oway falling
yeah,
there.
I mean, in successful franchises, they have that stability that they can do that. I mean, look at the Packers. I mean, no, not going to badger your team too much, but they made a ton of really terrible draft choices last year, potentially. But they're a franchise that is continually winning, so they can kind of do what they want. Like if they want to make a bad move, that's on them. They didn't think it's that way, but when you draft a fullback in the day 2 range, that's just crazy. But I mean, good teams can do that. So on the flip side of it, one other pro day thing that was very exciting was hearing the news about Pat Freiermuth. A tight end we'll talk about tonight is about 2 to 3 weeks away from contact, is what's being reported. That's a big deal. Being away for or 2 to 3 weeks away from being cleared for contact. That's a big deal, especially as we get ready for the draft. Freiermuth could potentially be a day 1, day 2, early day 2 pick, and if he's healthy and ready to go, that's big news for fantasy.
Yeah. I mean, it obviously helps him because maybe he can put a TikTok video out before the draft, and frankly, that might be all he needs. I don't want to spoil much because there's about 3.5 tight ends that we're gonna try to get a half an hour to 45 minutes on a show about. But yeah, him being able to actually move and function helps the draft stock. I know that's big shocking news there.
Right. Being able to see him is always a big deal. I do want to throw out a couple other little tidbits of pro day information. Are pretty big fans of Seth Williams, and at 6'3", well over 200 pounds, he posted right at the 4.5 mark, so that's a good thing, especially for someone like him. I was excited to see that he was right around the 4.5. That's good for somebody of his size. Any thoughts on Seth Williams, or are you still continuing to pound the table for him like we are?
Um, I was just hoping that my mic wasn't muted there for a second. Um, there are a limited number of humans that have that size and that speed, and they don't all work out. But the ones who do work out, their value switch helps you win ships, whether you hold the asset or not. I mean, for example, Jefferson. He's not a height, weight, speed. He's just the more speed and smooth. But if you have let's say DK Metcalf. I wasn't a fan of him. I'm still not, but he is what he is. If you have the height, weight, speed, and then you all of a sudden show anything on the field, it skyrockets the value. Whether you hold the value or not, the value went up. There's a limited number of individuals on the planet that have this guy's height, weight, speed, and any sort of functional tape. If you want to select him at 7 overall, fine. If no one wants to select him until 17, I'm going to be the guy making that selection. But I love him from a strictly ceiling perspective. And yeah, 4.50 with his weight is he's moving.
Yeah, that's really nice. I mean, the only thing that could be better than that is the next guy who will also be the first tight end we talk about. You know, a pre-pro day 40 time by Kyle Pitts under 4.5 is ridiculous. You know, the dude's like 6'6", 240 something. I mean, just a massive human being, an athletic marvel, and posting that kind of a 40 time, like obviously everybody knows, you know, he's kind of the belle of the ball in this class. Like there's just no other tight end that really even compares to him. You know, Brevin Jordan's a freakish athlete, but he's a little bit smaller. Maybe won't even run as fast. I mean, I did not see a 4.46 coming out of him. If he confirms that at a pro day at the end of the month, that'll be great. Pitts is just, what do you say about him? I mean, he's so good, you know, and think about it, this guy was a quarterback that transitioned to, you know, to tight end. So maybe you Justin Fields owners can get excited. There's potential. He could convert from quarterback to tight end and still be successful.
Well, I mean, it is a Florida quarterback that moves positions. I mean, that happened before. Can you name me the player? He also has concussion issues.
He also has concussion issues. Not off the top of my head. 40, 40 still matter.
Jordan Reed.
Oh, he wasn't he? Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah, he's got big concussion issues.
Actually, that could be two guys. Burton was also
Trey Burton. Yep.
quarterback when he was a freshman as well.
Yep.
Actually, I remember I was at that game, Florida State, and we knocked the socks off of them. Anyways, Pitts, yeah, he's essentially a wide receiver. He's basically a big split end who runs fast. And he shows it with the functional film. If you throw the ball up, he has the skills to just box you out and get the ball. There are very few human beings that have his physical skill set. Obviously, he did have the concussion issues, but I'd like to think we've moved and helped that situation as a whole, as a society, as people, fans of the game. But I'm not a doctor, not going to act like one here. Yeah, he's going to be someone that's going to go in the top 10 of the draft off athletic upside. And if you want to select him first overall because you don't have, or because you just want to say, hey, you know, I'm not going to have a shot at this position, this upside. Okay. I want to see the landing spot, but if you simply say, hey, I sold everything to get Herbert and I'm trying to think, Mims and Cam Akers or something. If you want to select Pitts first overall and pick first or second next year, and that's your way out, I don't hate it. I would see if I could move the pick, but
yeah,
I wouldn't hate the
I
pick.
would think in a super flex scenario, Pitts is probably like 6 to 8 range. One quarterback, he's probably more like 4 to 6 range, I would guess. RookieDraftGuide.com will have those ranges for you, but I'm not going to give that away because, well, you got to go there yourself. That would be my guess if those were if I had to put my money on something with him. But if he's a tight end, I mean, it's just going to be unfair in fantasy. I mean, because he will quickly probably push himself into the top, 3 at the position. If he gets moved to having wide receiver eligibility, then might be a little different. I need to see, like you said, landing spot. I need to see where he goes. But I mean, if you want to see film on him, 2020, basically any game outside of Texas A&M, I mean, the dude was just putting on a show. I mean, he is just so dynamic, and there's just nothing you can do about him because you can't cover him with a corner, you can't cover him with a linebacker. I mean, you have to double coverage him, and who are you going to pull off to do that? I mean, are you going to put a safety and a linebacker on him? Well, he's probably going to be able to beat both of them. I mean, it's just not fair. I mean, this is the 99 overall Madden player right here. I mean, it's just he's so dynamic. He's got good hands. I mean, I don't really see. I mean, short of the potential concussions, there's really not anything to not like about his game. And from a fantasy perspective, this is a guy you want to build around. Now, obviously, anybody has a chance to fail. That's just the way the world works. But I just don't see it with this guy. I mean, he feels like a sure thing, and in my mind, you pay whatever you feel like is reasonable, and nobody should be questioning you because this guy is just that elite, and he just keeps surprising people right and left. Because nobody, if you'd have thought about, because this is a Devy show, Pitts wasn't a guy on people's radar when he was the quarterback. As soon as he converted to tight end and began to show making strides, he began to be a name that was a hot commodity, and that's good on him. I mean, that shows a work ethic because he could have dug his heels in. We've seen plenty of quarterbacks go, "Oh no, I'm a quarterback." No, no, you're not a quarterback, And he said, "I'm changing," and it worked out well.
Yeah, it's not a matter of if you like him, it's how much.
Right.
And if the actual fantasy draft ends up as RB1 Chase, RB2 Pitts, okay,
Yep.
I can see some need ending up there, but like I said, tight end is a position that if you pick top 3 because you earned it, why not? He's going to help you next year by picking third, and then you have first, second, third overall selection in the future, and Pitts, who had the rookie lumps or whatever you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna, that natural year and a half he needs before he probably shows it.
Right. Yeah. Because look at so probably 5 to 10 years back, it was tight ends take about 3 years to develop. But even now, I mean, look at you know year 2 of a guy like Hawkinson started to become a little bit more fantasy relevant, really started to produce a little bit more consistently. Pitts is a more dynamic athlete. He can do more than a guy like that. And if he can pick up the game quickly, like a guy like Hawk, by year 2, you could have a tight end one, from game one. And I just don't. I can't hate on anyone that wants to make that move because you just don't see guys like this very often. I mean, think about even like a guy like. I mean, when you think back to when Gronk came out, he wasn't really even that same type of athlete. Like strong blocker, looked like he could be a little bit more dynamic in the passing game, but there were still questions and concerns. This guy, his game's ready. He's ready to roll. He's just got to get up to speed and make it happen. So,
What'd you see in the chat?
oh, it's Craig over there making bad dad puns about must be the Kyle Pitts show. If we don't get into other guys, this will be the Pitts. So, that is Craig, who desperately wanted to be on tonight, and he has now made his presence known. Pat Fryermuth. So, this is kind of the next man up, but really, right here, you could put Freiermuth and Jordan together in this combination, in this conversation. It's kind of what do you like? because Brevin Jordan's a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter, I think a little bit more dynamic though, probably a faster, probably more ability to flex out and do some different things. Where Fryermuth is, you know, people call him Baby Gronk. He's kind of in that mold where he's gonna be able to be a blocker. He's got that power and that strong lower body to be a blocker in the running game, but also be able to do some things in the passing game. But I don't think he's the same type of athlete. So these next two guys up, how do you feel about them, Paul? And is there one you like more than the other?
Yeah. I I have Jordan probably closer to Pitts than further from him. I mean, if we had a third Florida freak on this list, we'd be talking about Eileen Warnos. You want per show. Jordan, if you watch the film on him, if you watch the snap at the end of the first half against Florida when he was a sophomore, get some tape so that your jaw doesn't hit the floor on it. He just runs a couple individuals over and runs in the end zone. If you want to see the speed, you can watch the Louisville film from this year. It shows very well. If you want to say he doesn't have the best feet and or route running, I'm fine with that. I don't have a whole lot of faith in Miami's coaching staff. And yes, I know I'm saying that as an FSU fan, Willie Taggart can, you know, he can go stick it. Anyways, um, I do think that the feet are fine though for playing tight end because it's not like you're gonna have him run a bunch of like secondary cut routes with him. He's got soft hands. He does have some drops, but I'm willing to take the shot on him. And the fact that Miami said, hey, we're going to split you out wide once in a while, it shows that they trust him as an athlete. Um, I really like him. I think he's going to go at the back half of the first of the actual draft. And if that happens, you're taking him 7 to 12 range of the first round, rookie draft wise. How do you feel about Jordan
Oh,
there?
I mean, Jordan is an extremely dynamic athlete. I love the what was it North Carolina game this year. That was one that I watched early on in evaluating him, where I was just like, this guy is insane. I mean, he's just and at that point, I hadn't really gone in deep into the Pitts tape because going into the year, I was a big Brevin Jordan fan, so I was watching him because I wanted to confirm the things I thought about him because he's a Devy pick of mine. I think Brevin Jordan is one of those guys that you're going to see more routinely split out and doing some things as a receiver outside of just being in the blocking position. But the thing about Jordan is he can block pretty well. I mean, I know that I said he's a little undersized at 6'3", like 240, 245 ish. I think is probably what he'll weigh in at if he hasn't already. But even at that, that's still a solid size for a tight end. That if he needs to block, he's probably going to be giving up a couple inches to guys coming off the edge, but he's got enough power to at least chip him and keep him occupied for long enough for the quarterback to get rid of the ball if he needs to be a blocker. But I fully expect this guy, because of his athletic profile, he could be a guy that you could do some things out of the backfield. You could line him up as kind of the old school fullback and give him some dump passes or let him even run the ball if you wanted to. Because the way the NFL goes nowadays, tight ends are such a mismatch. You have the gadgety wide receivers that you can use on jet sweeps and do some things out of the backfield. But some of the more dynamic tight ends, you see teams using him as a mismatch because, kind of the same conversation with Pitts. Who's covering him? He's so fast and he's so smooth in getting out in his breaks and his burst. Like, who's going to cover him? Linebackers are not going to be able to keep up with him. You've got to double cover him or add a corner on him, and corners are going to be too small. They might be able to go up and fight for the ball, but Brevin Jordan's a strong dude, so I'm a big fan. I mean, in my personal rankings, it would be Pitts, Jordan, Freiermuth and Hunter Long are getting neck and neck just because of my love for the Hunter Long, but Freiermuth is not much different. I mean, he's really very similar in the sense that you can split Freiermuth out and do some things with him. I just don't know that he's as dynamic an athlete as Jordan, which is kind of what put Jordan up a little bit for me. But Freiermuth, I think, has all the traits that you want in a tight end. Perfect size. He's got plus speed. He's got good enough hands. I think Jordan's got a little bit better hands. Uh, if I remember correctly, he's a very good blocker. So he could step in day one and be a blocking tight end that gets used in the passing game. So I like all three of these tight ends, and I think even Hunter Long could fit in as a fourth tight end that you see drafted, in a one QB format, probably before the end of the third round or before the end of the second round. All four of these tight ends could be gone, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least. So I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of all these guys. I think they're all very good athletes, and with the way that the tight end group in fantasy is right now, this type of draft can really set things up for some value for long term because the tight end room in fantasy is so weak right now. We got three elite guys and then some other guys vying for it that could become top end tight ends but aren't quite there yet. And then a bunch of aging guys that will be out of the league within the next 5 years. I mean, it's like there's plenty of room for tight ends to come out of this draft and even the next couple drafts and push for tight end one possibilities.
Yeah. I liked his release off the line of scrimmage. That was pretty effortless, but when he cut, it was not, which was odd. Um, I like the blocking, but he gets a little high once in a while on the blocks, but he's a tight end, so it's fine. He does have the strong hands that you're looking for when you're in the 50-50 situations. Yeah, I think he goes in the second round. He's basically Mike Gesicki, but he blocks a little bit better than Gesicki. I don't think that you ever get like the TE 2 or 3 overall season out of him, but I don't think that you're throwing him out there as like, ah, crap, everyone else is hurt. All right, we're throwing him out there. I think he probably goes, by 2023 or something. He's probably tight end 8 to 12 range, and you're probably fine with that considering you're going to select him in the second round of the rookie draft.
That's not a bad thing at all.
And he's one of the safer players, but I just don't think you have the elite upside.
Yeah, I mean, there are some things that could be better, but I like the value proposition for him. If you're in need of a back end tight end one and you don't want to pay a high price, Fryermuth's the guy you target because you can get him at a better price. Jordan and Pitts in the end of the thing are probably going to be within the top 10 potentially, depending on where Jordan goes. And if you're a team that's in need in a few spots, target Freiermuth or Long in the second round. Use your first round pick to get a different position of need that has good value as well, and call it a day. I mean, I don't hate the idea.
I have absolutely no faith in the tight ends for next year. Not that some of them won't work, but if you pick second or third and you take Pitts at that spot, and then you take Freiermuth in the second and just go, all right, I have my position. I don't know exactly how it'll work out by 23, but I should have this position just locked up. Okay. I mean, I will sit here and throw Jordan up there, but if you like Pitts' upside, I don't think you're going to get Freiermuth at the back half of the second. So,
He's probably top 5 to 7 in the second round, I'd guess.
yeah, I mean, if you take Pitts at, you know, 3 and double up on him.
Well, and I
Okay.
mean, so you're basing that on you're an owner that doesn't trade very often. You're going to sit on these two guys as a core part of your team. And if that's the case, then absolutely.
You also have to have the I'm going to select first, second, or third next year
Right.
mindset and franchise behind it. But if that's the move that you make, the other positions work out quicker, so that can help you twice on the way up.
Right.
Once you get that, once you get the rookie lumps out of their system, in theory it should work. I mean, you're not going to have a situation where you own Jefferson from last year and I took him at 1-9 and now someone's offering me, the for sure 1-1 and you're not going to have
Mm-hmm.
that, but if you plan on selecting first next year, viable play.
Right. Yeah. I can't argue that. As somebody who does, I used to trade a whole lot more, but I've gotten a little bit better at just kind of sitting and waiting. But as somebody who's more active on the trade market, a move like that doesn't make a lot of sense because I probably am not keeping both tight ends. So unless the value is there, so I've always kind of been I'm going to take the best player regardless of situation based on my board. I'm just going to do it and figure it out from there. In that case, if they are tight end, then well, so be it. Especially in this class, I mean, it just I can't hate it. I mean, because coming up, we're going to talk about Tommy Tremble from Notre Dame, but the kid that was a freshman, Michael Mayer, I think will be a really nice tight end when he comes out. But it's still what 2 3 years away potentially. So the tight end group over the next couple of years will probably be a little bit quieter. So you have to make the most of this class because there's just such high end talent. The top easily the top four tight ends. So
It's a move that will show patience, and if you don't have it, you can't make that play. But if you do have the patience, it might really work out because you'll be selecting first when you probably have the roster to pick sixth or seventh, and you'll almost be cheating everybody else.
potentially. So speaking of four tight ends, the fourth tight end would be Hunter Long from Boston College. After AJ Dillon left, the offense almost seemingly went through Long this year. I mean, if you watch in 2020, that dude was targeted early and often. I mean, he had right around 60 receptions, like 700-ish yards. I mean, he was very involved, which isn't always for tight ends in college. Sometimes tight ends just don't get utilized properly, and Long was. I mean, uh, Long is a guy that I think can step in and be your tight end two from the get go and develop into a tight end one. I think that there is some parts of his game that need refinement. He's a solid blocker, but obviously I think the guys that are ahead of him in this class are better blockers. I think he does a good job, and I'm just trying to look through my notes as I do it. Um, he does a good job. Well, okay, so I need to reframe. I'm rephrasing that. He was a better pass blocker than run blocker. I'll say that. I will also say that he's got the athletic profile to be, tight end three in this class. Like I could see him jumping Fryermuth 5 10 years down the road if all things pan out properly. Now, I still don't think he ever gets past Jordan and Pitts unless injuries take those two out of the game. But Hunter Long is a guy that I would target in the back half of the second and be excited about him as my, kind of tight end two for the future. Unless you're in a tight end premium, then he might even go a little higher than that. What's your take on Long?
Yeah. Speed is nice. Acceleration was nice. He's got some hands issues. He drops some easy ones once in a while. Um, but he shows solid footwork also route running wise. He's probably a B minus NFL athlete, but he's also a B minus NFL athlete. And it shows. I think he probably goes in probably between about 50 to 75 of the actual draft, and he'll probably go 2.7 to 3.5 range of the rookie, and he's probably the last tight end that I can see with a realistic shot of working out. Now, that being said, I know for a fact there's going to be someone that goes between 65 to 100 overall that I just hate, and then I'll have to look at him because every season I miss on about 3 tight ends in my evals, but I don't know. Maybe I can't scout 6'5", 250 that well, but we'll see.
Yeah, there's a few guys that have been kind of rising up the in the conversation during the pro day season. And Long is a guy that's continued to be a name that's people are talking highly of. But there's a couple more guys that I want to bring up that are all of a sudden kind of out of nowhere. The first one is Tommy Tremble from Notre Dame. He has a good athletic profile, but when Cole Kmet is there and Michael Mayer is there, like those guys are just studs. Where this guy is just a plus athlete that can block pretty well. But they didn't. He just and that's kind of where I'm at with this guy. Tremble is a guy that he's 6'4", right around 250. He wasn't good enough to beat these guys out. He wasn't good enough to beat a freshman. He wasn't good enough to beat Cole Kmet out. Like, he wasn't used as their number one tight end, and we know Notre Dame loves their tight ends. He just couldn't beat these guys out. So I don't really know what to make of him for fantasy wise. Like, it almost feels like, okay, Notre Dame tight end, maybe I'll take a shot and stash him and see what happens in the NFL draft, because his name has started coming up a lot. I mean, a lot of the scouting services have started moving him up their tight end ranks, and he wasn't in the top 10 even a month ago, but all of a sudden now he's like number 5, 6, 7 when it comes to the tight end position. So I'm not really sure what to make about him for fantasy, because everything I watched, I was not super impressed. I saw the athlete, but it looked like he was probably just a blocking tight end because Notre Dame was using everybody else to catch the balls at the tight end position.
Yeah, and it's not like you said, okay, Komet is here, at least from a college
Mm-hmm.
perspective. Komet's here, Mayer's here. Is he someone who sees the field and runs routes a lot, or is he just out there and we don't know? And you actually see this a lot more on the defensive side in the SEC, ironically. Um, just more of these guys don't work out than do work out, and you see guys get enamored with some physical skills.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to assume that Brian Kelly knows that if he were a decent enough receiver, let's be frank, those receivers are not overly good, and it's not like they've had 2, 3, or 4 of them the last few seasons where he would have seen the
Mm-hmm.
field. If he works out, he'll work out for somebody else, but unless he's literally free, I'm not going to be the one who takes a shot.
Right. No, I mean, that's so so you have to look at the back half of your drafts. For me, it's like mid third round and back. You get to the point where you need to start deciding, okay, who are guys that I want to stash? Who are guys that I want to, throw on that taxi squad? Just kind of see what happens. And a lot of those guys, it's situational. It's, do I like I mean, you're a big fan of the athlete over situation. Um, those all have to go into your consideration. And does Tremble fall into that mold? I don't know. I mean, he's a plus athlete, but if he goes
And
to a good situation, then maybe that's a conversation I'm willing to have. So I'm kind of in the middle on guys like this. And even the next guy, Quentin Morris from Bowling Green, another one that's popping up into the top 10 conversation at the tight end position. Uh, and it's like, okay, plus athlete, small school guy that never's really produced a tight end. Bowling Green's not known for their tight ends. So it's like, okay, what do we make about guys like that? I mean, what do you do with them? And that's where the NFL draft, where these guys go, if at all, in there. That kind of determines some of that for me.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple other interesting, basically wide receiver converts that, for one reason or another, I'm just not a fan of. But whoever ends up heading between 65 and 105 overall, when it's Saturday night, hopefully I think they have the draft on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but um, those will be the players who I look at and go, all right, what did I miss, and did I miss something? And if I severely missed on them, okay, I know that there's going to be a couple players I go, okay, the NFL saw it before I did. I mean, that's why they're paid for this, and that's why we're begging you to sign up for the site. So maybe one day you guys can fill my soda glass. Maybe one day they make the big bucks.
RookieDraftGuide.com. Help us, help Paul. That's what I'm hearing.
That's
For
that's right. I will settle for about this much soda.
for just $6 a month, you too can adopt a Paul.
Oh boy, that's
rookie.
We don't want to scare them off. Wow.
Oh, that just felt like where it was going. We'll send you the picture and name of a Paul in your area. All right. So next up would be a guy that is also, well, he's always kind of been in the conversation in the top 10, but a guy that neither one of us have been super high on, and that's um, Georgia tight end Tre'McKitty. He has fair hands. Like they're plus, they're not bad. I don't have a problem with him, but I'm just not a big fan. I feel like this guy needs a lot of coaching at the next level to be even a number 3 tight end. But I'm hearing scouts and guys guys that get paid to do this for a living talking about this guy being able to be a starting tight end at the league, and I don't see it personally. I just don't see what people are seeing. He had a decent 2019 season, but 2020 I really wasn't all that impressed. What's your take on McKitty? How do you feel about him? Is he a guy you're taking at 101 in rookie drafts because he's your favorite tight end?
So he transferred out of my favorite school. So I've watched him for about 4 seasons now. Um, he's a decent enough athlete to get open at college, but I don't know if he is in the NFL. Um, Also, if you want to make your coach upset, if you're a running back, fumble the ball. If you're a receiver, drop a wide open pass. If you're a tight end, be about 8 yards off the line of scrimmage, be wide open, have it hit you right in the hands, and then have it hit the ground right in front of you. That will happen a high number of times with him, and it will just infuriate you to where you're watching FSU and go, wow, we can't even get this to work out. I thought Taggart was the problem. I mean, he was, but if you have one of those, you're just not going to see the field again. And he drops the ball a lot. Um, from a blocking perspective, he's not the strongest blocker. Um, just being frank about it, he's 245, and it shows when he goes up against a defensive end. From a college perspective, it sounds like I'm dogging him. Hey, he gave a couple nice years at the school that I'm a fan of. Appreciate it. From an NFL perspective, hopefully you get that round 6 or 7 money, invest it well, and start selling insurance.
Best it will. Start selling insurance. There we go. Tre'McKitty, insurance salesman at large. So, as we get to the back half of this show, the question that I have is outside of the top 4, are there any fantasy relevant tight ends that you're taking a shot on? So we've mentioned a few guys that I'm seeing kind of become names that people are hyping up, whatever that's worth. is there anybody that you see where you're like, you know what, I want to take a shot on him. He may not have shown me much, but I'm intrigued.
Did Ferguson return to school
Yes. Yeah, I
out of
believe so. Yeah,
Wisconsin?
Jake
He
Ferguson?
did.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say I almost had to pump a Wisconsin player.
No.
Ego wasn't gonna let that one happen.
Way to go, Joe.
Um, that's right. Um, if he's gonna be free, maybe Noah Gray. I mean,
Kid from Duke, right? Yeah.
yeah, he plays smart. He doesn't have the best athlete in him, but he somewhat has the quick feet. There's just not much here behind him. I would almost rather just hope McKitty works out because there's at least the athlete, but this is one of those reasons which I'm saying, hey, Jordan in the early second or Freiermuth in the early second, just double up on them and move on. Or you make an effort to take Jordan and Long if you're in the playoffs. And if you're also in that spot and you have the seasons that you can sit on them, if you have that rare situation. But it was going to be Ferguson, but he went back, and there's just not much here
Yeah.
behind it.
There.
Who
Well,
do you
and
have?
so you're seeing more and more these quarterbacks converting to tight end, and there's a kid that um, at CMU came to play quarterback, Tony Polgen. He wound up finishing his career with Virginia as a tight end. He's not a dynamic athlete, but he's a hard worker, and I see enough there that I think if he can get drafted by a team that can develop him as their kind of their deeper tight end, like maybe he works his way into a Kyle Rudolph type situation where he gets a couple of good years of fantasy value. Like he's a big kid. I think he's like 6'6", 6'7". He's a plus blocker. Like he has no problem being a decent blocker, even though he's converted from a quarterback just in the last few years. I'm not super hyped on him, but when I watched his stuff in 2020 with Virginia playing against better competition, I was like, okay, interesting. But he's not a yak guy. Like he's not somebody who's gonna get you much after the catch. I mean, it's not super intriguing, but if it's free and I need to put somebody on the taxi squad, I'd at least be moderately interested. So,
Yep.
and that's a tough thing. I mean, and especially in the tight end position, you never. I mean, there's not a class where you get so deep. I'd have to go back and look, but four tight ends in a class is probably one of the deeper classes we've seen over the last decade. Just trying to think back over the last 10 years worth of tight end drafts, it's like okay, two, three, maybe. I mean, this is a solid draft. It's just you know if you're in need of tight end, you're gonna have to get one in the first two rounds. You're not gonna be able to sit and wait potentially.
I literally looked at the last two UCLA ones and went, was it Wilson
Was that
2 years
Caleb
ago?
Wilson? Yeah.
Who I was somewhat interested in, and then the NFL said, yeah, you went number 250 overall, and it's like, okay, just scratch him off the list. And then I was not interested in
Oh yeah.
Asiasi, and then he went in the third round to New England, and then you had to look at it again, and then even New England said, yeah, get out of here because we're spending a bunch of money on these others. But whoever ends up going late third to really early fifth, look at on Friday night, look at on Saturday night. Even, I mean, I'm not going to advocate watching highlight film ever, but if that's all you have on some of these individuals, watch the 5 minute highlight film. Just at least familiarize yourself, because frankly, that's what I'll be doing
Well, yeah. I mean, if
that
you
night.
see a surprise draft choice, you have to
Yeah,
go back and look. Because ultimately, these NFL scouts get paid way more than any of us, and they obviously saw something that we didn't see. Now, that doesn't always mean they're right. I mean, but you at least have to give it the due diligence checking on.
Also, on the other aspect is we're not sure how much the pro day is real. So it's not like you get the off season, the scouting, combine, re-scouting, draft, and then third scouting attempt. You, you're kind of going on try number 2 right off the get-go. So it's another one of the reasons I want as many shots as I can have early. And then if I have fourths and fifths, fine. But I just want as many shots in the first round as I can get my hands on. And the second round, if it's not super flex or defensive leagues, yeah, get off my team. Like, I don't want any second rounders unless they're the 2-1 selection and you're fine with taking Freiermuth because you want to sit on them for a year or two. Just get these off of my
Right.
hands.
Yeah, and this is going to be an interesting, and I said it early on in the process. This will be a really interesting draft because you're seeing scouts and you're seeing these teams have to do their work in such a different way that it'll be interesting to see. For at least for me, it's kind of a social experiment how they handle not being able to physically be so in person with these players throughout the season. And now you're starting to see them a little bit more. They're at the pro days and they're a little bit closer with the guys and things like that. But I'll be intrigued to see which guys can pivot and handle this new virtual way of scouting, which is what we've had to do our entire careers, as opposed to guys that are so used to having boots on the ground, being in person watching these guys play. So I think this will be a really fascinating draft class, but I think you'll also see. My gut tells me the hits and the misses will be it'll look quite a bit different this year, just because some of these guys, I mean, you've got the opt outs, the virtual scouting, I mean, the whole shebang. Like, I'm really intrigued to see hit rates in, 5, 10 years on this class because it could be all over the place.
If you decide at the end of this that you want to basically opt out of the draft this year, like you're moving your 1-5 and 2-5 for, well, let's say you move your 2-5 and everything else you have behind it for like Mims, Rager, something like that, and then you move your 1-5 for a first and second next year. I'm fine with heading with more known than more unknown, and I know that that's
Right.
odd saying in some of these spots, but there were a lot of individuals that were stuck in situations that they couldn't really control. So if you just want to opt out of the draft this year, I'm fine with it. But yeah, there's basically 4 tight ends, and then I'm opting out.
Well, and you know, depending on where your team's at in its life cycle, if you're a contending team, it doesn't hurt to move those picks for future picks, and try to acquire a better position in next year's draft. I mean, like, it's all roster construction at that point and where you're at, and for those of you that are out there that are trying to figure out what to do, our Discord chat is always having those conversations. I mean, every day somebody's posting, hey, I got offered this trade, or I'm looking to make this trade. I've got Julio Jones and I want to move him because I'm not a contender. I'm like, we're having those conversations on the regular in there. So obviously as we get to the end of the show, it's going to be shameless plug time. Discord, the Facebook community, we've got a lot of those things going on. If you're struggling trying to figure out where your team's at in the process of being built, maybe you need to draft 2 tight ends like Paul's been talking about tonight. Those are the places to find out. You can find us over on Twitter. At least I'm over there. Paul's just kind of a Twitter stalker. He just hangs out for the NFL news and notes. He doesn't really talk, but the rest of us will post some funny gifs and do some silly stuff on there and have some fun. But join us. If you haven't already liked, subscribed, done all those things, make sure you do that because YouTube needs to know that you appreciate and enjoy what you're seeing here with us. And let's keep the conversation going. Um, the things that we threw out tonight, taking 2 tight ends in one draft may seem crazy, but depending on where your team's at, it may not be crazy. Like that. We're here to be that silent co-owner, or maybe not so silent. I guess it just depends on how you feel, and if you want us to answer questions, then we're not so silent. But RotoHeat's always been here to help make life easier for you and help you decide on those tough things, like should I go back to back tight end because my team is just not ready to compete? Maybe. RookieDraftGuide.com. We have all of our ratings and rankings, our film that we've been looking at. We've got all that stuff up there. We've got draft pick ranges that are getting entered in. So as we do the ADP and fill out all that information, we're telling you where is the sweet spot if you want to get these players on your team. Uh, Obviously, you got to become a patron to get some of that content. Some of the content is readily available already if you join the site. We've got IDP for you IDP folks. We've been hitting the tape hard on those guys too, trying to get you ready for those drafts. RotoHeat.com, the guys have been pumping out tons of content. Obviously, with free agency blitz we've had in the last few weeks, Sully and Jacob and Craig and all the team are just pumping out articles like it's going out of style, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to help you, give you as much information as possible, help you make the most informed, potentially good decisions that we can help you make, and that's it. That's my spiel, and I'm sticking to it. So these are all the tight ends. These are all the tight ends that we think you need to know about. There are plenty of other draft-eligible tight ends. If you have questions about them, hit us up. We'll give you our opinions. That's what we're good at, is telling you what we think. Paul, as always, it's a pleasure. We're going to try to add some guests on in the coming weeks. We're going to do some more mock drafts over the next few weeks. As we get closer and closer to the NFL draft, we're going to try to just have fun with it and get you guys ready for rookie drafts, because as soon as that NFL draft's over, rookie draft season is hot and heavy. That Sunday and Monday starts all the drafts. So, Paul, thanks as always, buddy. Everybody in the chat that's been listening, we appreciate you guys. Stay classy. We love you. We'll talk to you next week.